Hi, buddy. Welcome to Face to Face, and it's all about our new hospital, the acute hospital coming to southwestern Ontario, right outside of Windsor, right here serving Windsor, Essex. How did we get to this point? What has been the transition? What made the decisions come the way it has? There's so much we're going to talk about with David Mouche from Windsor Regional Hospital, as well as, of course, Dave Cook, who's also on the task force from the very beginning. But first, let's take a look at the video that has brought us to today of our infrastructure of what we have now.
They've aged well, but when the earliest parts of these hospitals were built, Lester B. Pearson was Canada's Prime Minister. Gas was selling for 20 cents a litre, and the Ambassador Bridge was a new sight on the city's skyline.
They are old. We're actually doing this interview in a building that was constructed in 1927, and we've kind of built around that building since that time.
These maps show nearly a century's worth of development and redevelopment at both sites.
Looking at a map like this from an infrastructure point of view, you know there are going to be challenges.
So I'm joined today by Don Campbell. He is with Angus, which is a company that Windsor Regional Hospital hires to oversee the facilities here, and he also works at several other hospitals in Ontario.
That's right.
So how do our campuses compare when you look at infrastructure?
When we look at infrastructure here, Allison, I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really good, 1 being really poor, this is about a 1, maybe a 2.
Okay, why?
Well, the infrastructure is very old. So in the room that we're standing in right now is the main air handling unit room. This room is about 45 years old. So just to put it in perspective, the normal life expectancy of any of the equipment we're going to see inside of this room is about 25 years. So this equipment today is about 25 years past its normal expectancy. And we spend a lot of money in just maintaining the equipment that we have here today. But quite frankly, we're still dealing with some antiquated equipment, the standards that have evolved over many years, and today we're maintaining buildings at a much higher standard. So you talk about best-in-class facilities, this is old technology. You can see here, these are old valves. Up here is an old pneumatic control system. Today we would be using electronic and more sophisticated digital systems to maintain the quality of the air and the quality of the temperature of the air that's delivered into the patient's room.
About $4 million is spent on general upkeep every year, and really no amount of money can bring these hospitals up to modern standards for patients.
So we're in the basement at the Olette campus now, and Don, I'm feeling a little bit claustrophobic. We're not that tall, but I think I could...
Allison, look at that. That ceiling's under 8 feet.
How come? What's going on here?
I think there's just been, over the years, a lot of new stuff has been added into this building. It was never designed to accommodate a lot of mechanical, electrical equipment. They probably started out with the ceilings actually higher, and as the buildings became more sophisticated and there was more mechanical, electrical equipment to be added, the ceilings have been lowered and lowered and lowered, to now to the point where they just can't be lowered any further, and we don't have any more space to add anything else into the ceiling. There's ventilation ducts, there's fire alarm systems, there's communication cables, there's power. There's sprinkler piping, there's fire protection piping.
Could we move toward an all-digital facility? Is there room for all the wiring and cables that would be required?
No, absolutely not.
The hospital is already storing communication technology in tight spaces, like, for example, this old housekeeping closet.
We're fortunate to have Megan Angus here with us today as well. She specializes in digital technology, and we've been talking today about the limitations of our infrastructure at these campuses. What story are we seeing here in terms of being a digital campus?
Well, and that's a good question. As you can see, this room is really small. It probably wasn't intended to host this many IT services. It's really congested in here. This door is solid wood. There's not a lot of ventilation coming in here. There's also water coming through this closet and electrical services. So this is probably not a good mix for our digital hospital, and to add any more IT services in here would be a risk. If you're already using a housekeeping closet or a limited closet like this, there's really no more space to put any more IT services in here.
The patient rooms here are some of the oldest in Ontario. The room we are in today was built around the same time viewers met this family for the first time, and nearly a decade before Neil Armstrong landed on the moon.
They're 50, 55 years old, and again, really low ceilings. Just from the perspective of the mechanical electrical systems in these rooms, again, very antiquated. Way back on the back wall, you see the heating elements. They've got fins on them. Not ideal from an infection control perspective. We wouldn't do that today. Ventilation standards, again, they're subpar based on what we would do based on ASHRAE standards today. Washroom, sink is actually outside of the washroom here. So here in a semi-private room, we've got exposure to infection control issues and just pure privacy issues.
So you go to the washroom as a patient. It's a shared room. You've
Shared
got two
room, yeah.
patients sharing a room. They go to the washroom. And in order to even wash your hands, you've got to start touching things and the next person.
Exactly.
Yuck.
Just not conducive to good infection control procedures today.
Patricia Tompkins has spent a lot of time lately checking out the rooms.
What do you think about the size of the room?
It could be larger, and it sure could be a lot more private.
There's very little room for visitors, and her roommate is a little too close for comfort.
She's got a problem, you've got it too. And like if she has to go down for a test, we have to take my bed out to get her bed out and then put it back in.
What do you think about the idea of a new hospital?
Oh, it's long overdue.
Until a new hospital is built, though, expensive, short-term upgrades that do nothing to enhance the care of patients like Patricia are inevitable.
What you see going on behind us here is a replacement to the fire alarm system. This happens to be an example of where the technology became obsolete, and we actually had to replace the system in its entirety. And you can imagine the amount of work it must take to reroute cabling and systems through a building. We've looked in the ceiling spaces. We know how congested it is, and we know what that really translates is risk and at high cost to the hospital.
Both campuses require a vast amount of capital to even get them to today's standards. And we can't, first of all, we can't get these buildings to today's standards. We can't make 80% private rooms. It's impossible.
No amount of money will change the fact that there isn't enough parking for patients. There is no helipad at our trauma center and insufficient space in our emergency departments. Now, that's not to say Windsor hasn't had any investment in its hospitals. This map shows about 15% of the hospital was upgraded between 1999 and 2001.
The other 85 has barely had a coat of paint. We're getting by, it's great, but there are a lot of other communities in Ontario that have upgraded infrastructure, and I think it's about time Windsor joins that group.
Hi, welcome back. I think that's been very helpful, so thank you for doing that video, and I guess it's to a degree. Welcome back to both of you. You've been here before talking about our new hospital, and boy, oh boy, when was it all started? I mean, honestly, because we've all had meetings and open houses. So when did the whole concept of this start? Going all the way back?
Actually, I'll start with 2008, 2009 was when both Windsor Regional and Hotel du Grace Hospital had to look at the future, what it looked like for each organization moving forward. And what really drove it was finding medical school spaces. With the Schulich Medical School was having the teaching environment at both campuses. So both hospitals put proposals together about what the future looks like. The ministry looked at the cost of that, looked at the plans, and made a conclusion, which is they were right, is the plans that were put forward really didn't look to the future. They resulted in a deficient product at the Olette campus, as you could renovate that campus all you want, and you're still going to have a deficient product. And the last thing they wanted to do was build a new hospital for only one hospital, because then it became financially not viable. And that's where the government appointed the task force that Dave was involved in.
And the original task force, who was on that?
Teresa Perusa, Tom Porter, and myself, and was appointed by Dwight Duncan when he was still a cabinet minister from the East End, to just sort of get the ball rolling, to ask the community the question, are you in support of moving from two sites to one new modern state-of-the-art hospital? And I mean, you were involved in that. You helped us sort of where we should go, who we should talk to.
Well, and that's the thing, and I think sometimes during the last few months and last few weeks, as you kind of finished off the discussions, but when you think back, folks, we were all in discussions. There was so many layers of task force people and people giving input. I know from the college point of view that we were there saying, you know, we want this hospital to have something for our students in case we have to have a thing. So make sure there's a classroom. And I know the university was part of it, and Schulich was part of it. And then community groups and union groups and staff unions and hospital unions. So
the community had to look at this as not being property or the of one particular even government, that it was something the community was going to drive and everybody would have the opportunity to participate. I'm sure David agrees that all the meetings we've been going to and the number of people that we have met both in the early stages and now, it's really been, for me, it's been a blast. I've learned a lot, and I think the community has really rallied around. It's been a very positive process.
Right? I mean, that's the main thing too, that I think that I don't know how many meetings you've gone to, because I know you had open houses in the county, you had open houses in Windsor, every part of Windsor. I know we had one down at the Center for the Arts. Like every ward had something, every place in the county, like every region had it. So you got to be happy that you could really look people in the eye and say, look, we reached out and we came with the show to show everybody and discuss, right?
Yeah, and from the start, that was the position. As we looked at what other hospitals have done in the province to get to this point. And as a group, we said we wanted to do something different. We wanted to get the community engaged early. It started with Dwight's task force, and get rid of the politics, put the politics aside, look at the project as a whole, see if the community supports it, what are the benefits of it in the first place. And then when we went into the planning, when the government gave us the money, we said we're not going to have a little group of us sit around a table and figure this out. Let's get the community involved in it from the start. And we tried every which way to get the community involved. And it was, like you said, all the various town halls, conversations we've had, feedback we've had, getting the community involved in criteria, getting the community on the site selection committee. Nobody's done that in Ontario or Canada.
I remember that, because remember everyone discussed, if you remember on the show, we even talked about who was going to be on this committee, the site selection, who was going to decide, and everything. And of course, it was a process that was followed, as you know, Dave. It's a process that followed not by what we thought in Windsor-Essex, it was all mandated by the province.
Well, it was mandated by the province that we had to find a site, but I mean, another option that the hospital could have gone into was to announce one day in the community that look, we've decided the best thing to do is we're going to build a new hospital. We put an application into the province, and here's where it's going to be located, and that would be it. But that's not what's been followed in this case. In this case, we've said right from the beginning, when this hospital is built, we want people in this community to look at it and say, that's our hospital. We had input. It reflects what we said as a community.
Technically, there was 33 criteria, the last one being price, but 32 criteria. We put them together as a steering committee, and the steering committee was made up of different healthcare provider organizations, the hospitals, the Essex County Medical Society's president, CCAC, the Erie St. Clair Lynn. We had, of course, City County were there at the table, the city planner, as well as Brian Gregg from the county, Tom Hunt. We put together the criteria in draft form, and we put it out for the community to get feedback on. We asked people for feedback on the internet. We went on talk-in shows, call-in shows, and we actually did some town halls and got feedback on the criteria, what's important to them. That, as a steering committee, got all that feedback, modified the criteria, weighted the criteria on the basis of all that feedback, and that's what was given to the volunteer site selection committee to say, okay, here's the template of the process, here is the criteria that was community-driven criteria, use that now to select the best. And the site selection committee volunteers spent hundreds of hours. It estimates over like 1,500 hours.
Process, besides the volunteers, is supported by professionals that have done this in the past and gave the advice. And then, as you know, there was a fairness commissioner that oversaw the whole process to make sure that everything was being done in the proper way. So it really was a process with a lot of integrity.
But the thing is, Dave, you have seen it up close as being part of a government, the provincial government, the NDP government, as well as watching from the other side of the aisle. But have you ever seen a process like this? Was this more than you've ever seen? Is this all your years of experience, or is this usually we just aren't exposed to it? This is the right way of doing it.
I mean, I think it's honestly could say that this particular issue has had more consultation in our community than anything.
Too much?
No, I don't think it's been too much. I mean, of course, there's going to be on a big project like this, there's going to be some folks that have differing points of view, and that's good. That's fine. But has there been too much? No, and there's going to be a lot more. We're only at stage 1A and B.
Sure.
When we actually get into designing the hospital, then there's going to be a lot more consultation.
So you, in your expert opinion, and I say expert because you've been part of government and things like that, you're satisfied with the location?
I'm satisfied with the location, and we both said right from the beginning, that if you buy into, and this is what we consulted on, here's the criteria, what's your position on the criteria, what's your advice on the criteria? We said that to the community, we got that input. And here's the process that we're going to follow. What do you think of the process? And we got input on that. So then I said, okay, so now that we have the process and the criteria, if we follow that process and criteria, we have to support the location. And that's, I feel very comfortable that, because the other thing you have to remember, the actual acute care hospital is only one part of the package.
Right.
It's a pretty amazing reform of the entire system that we're proposing.
Well, it's going to be just like Christmas because there's more than one present in this discussion today. We're going to talk about some of these urgent cares. We learned a lot in the last few weeks of what's going to be going on at the Grace site and what's going to be going on downtown. I even learned a lot more with Dave Cook and David Moucher right after this. Hi everybody, welcome back to Face to Face. It's not often on Face to Face. You were doing this, for 15 seasons. I don't know if you know that. I know you guys follow along.
I've seen it.
You've seen it. You've been watching. You've learned from it.
Never misses an episode. He says.
CEO and a MPP. I mean, we've had good people on. I've had Ed Broadbent on, and anyways, more about the hospital. Let's talk about that. So, one of the things that we've always talked about is the Grace site, and I learned the other night when your little bit of a debate, not debate, but your information session at City Council before they voted for the levy. I learned it's not, we see an urgent care, and I think we think of those in the corners, down on Lausanne or Walker Road, or in South Windsor you walk in and you need someone. This is really an emergency room, and I had no comprehension, David Moucher, that what was really be going on there. So I think let's just talk a little bit about what that site's going to look like.
Yeah,
for people in the West End.
Yeah, exactly, and for anybody in Windsor, Essex, because we heard from Queensway in Toronto that people drive past 4 emergency departments to go to their urgent care center. So urgent care center, a lot of people have a misunderstanding is if you drive through the city or the county today, you'll see these urgent care center signs, and they're not a real urgent care center. What an urgent care center means really is a satellite emergency department. It's staffed by emergency room physicians, emergency room nurses. The difference is about 85 to 90% of the patients that come to an emergency department today go home from the emergency department. They do not get admitted. So the issue is, how can you see those 85 to 90% in a quicker, more efficient manner? What happens now in a typical emergency department is you have your patients who come in from the street, drive in. At the same time, you have EMS coming in. If a patient comes in with vital signs absence, or the other day we had an accident on one of our highways, they came in, everything stops in the emergency department because all the focus of all the staff goes on the individuals coming in with vital signs absence. As a result, maybe someone with a broken arm who needs stitches is going to be delayed because they're in effect competing with the EMS traffic coming in. Urgent care doesn't have EMS going to it. So what it allows is those patients, we're talking substantial numbers, who are being seen that day and can go home, can be seen by emergency room physicians, emergency room nurses, without, in effect, the competition from EMS, are seen more efficiently, more effectively. There'll be a laboratory on site, a pharmacy on site, diagnostic imaging, including a CT scanner, which is critical. Wow. So anyone with any type of head injury or head issue, to determine if they've had a stroke or bleeding, it can be diagnosed there.
And that's what I missed, because I just thought of it urgent care, and you think of a walk-in clinic, right? I mean, that's what we do.
Think back to the original process. We talked about a new acute care hospital, but it was through the consultation that was done with not only the community, but with the staff and doctors and so forth, that this whole thing has evolved to the point where, well, there is an issue here. We need to have another emergency room. So that's where, when people say, well, you've had a consultation, you haven't listened, this is a result of listening, some major changes to the whole package that was put forward.
So how big will the Grace site be? I mean, is it a couple stories? Anything we can envision?
Yeah, well, if you
look
look at it now, it's going to be approximately 3 stories. I mean, it's all very early planning. What else is going to be in there is the Windsor Family Health Team. That's critical. Windsor Family Health Team sees over 10,000 patients a year themselves. They're going to have all the diagnostics on site for those patients.
Right.
Plus, what's going to happen is individuals who go to the urgent care center who do not have primary care are going to be teamed up with the Windsor Family Health Team to have primary care, so they don't have to use the emergency department or even urgent care for their issues. They can focus on using primary care.
Okay.
So it's going to honor the history of Grace site with respect to clearly in the naming as well as
well, I'm very happy about that because I am by Grace. I am by Grace, and my mother was a head nurse at Grace, and we love Hotel du Grace, but there was Grace, and then there was Grace.
My son was born at Grace.
Yeah, I was going to say so. Supermax.
Yes.
But I think that's great too. So tell us what we call the Met campus. What's that going to look like once things get going?
Well, that was the transfer with the city. So we we're going to take ownership of the Grace site from the city, and we transferred to them the Met site. What's going to happen at Met is it goes to the city. Clearly, with respect to the Met site, it's very heavily residential around there, as well as has the commercial on the Tecumseh Road. So the city is going to work with the community on developing that site. I think there's great opportunities for that community.
But it will not be medical in any form.
No, the only possible portion of that building that could be viable, but I don't know about the physical location of it, would be the cancer center itself. That was built. That was built over a decade ago at a cost of about $18 million. There's a lot of misinformation. People think, oh, it's 50, 60 million. 18 million is a large amount of money, but that's really the only physical space that could possibly be used for something. Whether it's used or not, I don't know. But even that, if you look out 10 years from now, that's getting up there in age too.
So let's talk about the Olette Avenue campus site of Windsor Regional Hospital, formerly Hotel du Grace. What is that going to look like?
Well, there's going to be, that will be back to Hotel du Grace Healthcare, and we'll focus on mental health at that particular site. So there'll be, access. There'll be the current program that is being located right now. I'm trying to come up with the name of the transition stability program that is being initiated now by Hotel du. So that can go into there. Right. There's another portion that's really not part of the application at this point, but Hotel du Grace is looking at consulting to see what other things could go in to be part of a hub that would be both healthcare and other types of services, which for me, when I look and I see what's planned for Grace and what's planned at Hotel du, because there's also going to be disease management at both the sites. If you're really looking at access and from people in the community, access to an acute care hospital is one thing, but when you've got complex health issues, disease management programs are really important to be able to get to, so that's going to be decentralized. And then there's the urgent care, and then there's the mental health. And I can make a pretty good case that we are vastly increasing access for the downtown community to the programs that are going to be used a lot more than a hospital. Some people talk in terms of the acute care hospital in a very old-fashioned way, as if you go to the hospital for everything. That isn't the way of hospitals these days, nor should it be.
So, and then what about the Hotel du Grace Tafor campus? What will be happening there out on Prince Road?
So they are going to take responsibility for all mental health services. So they currently have children's mental health and long-term mental health. They're going to now have acute mental health. So they're going to have, in effect, a center of excellence for mental health services, which is going to be fantastic. Wow. In addition, there are a substantial amount of patients right now who are there, complex continuing care, that have to leave that facility to get things like diagnostic imaging or things like dialysis. And that's stressful on any patient, let alone an elderly patient that has to leave, be transported 2 or 3 times a week just to go back. putting those services at that campus as well, not only for the patients there, but also for that area. And that's where Dave talks about the additional access. That's going to give access points to individuals who need dialysis or need diagnostic services on that part of town, access to it if they need so at the hospital. So it's not only, as Dave stated, we got to get away from that concept of an acute care hospital, and we are, that it's not, if you go to an acute care hospital, you have to be very sick.
The key word is acute.
Acute.
Yes.
And what
The
happens?
definition of acute is what?
Definition of acute is you're acutely ill, you're sick. It's a high level, right, of acuity. So it's, when you go there, you have to be sick. You need some type of surgical intervention there, which usually attaches to it a length of stay in an inpatient bed.
Yeah.
The days of dropping into the hospital just to say hello or to get blood taken, it's a very high risk place, a lot of infections. The last thing you want to do is bring people into a hospital of more of a social atmosphere. It really has to have that focus of dealing with acutely ill patients.
Okay, real rapid fire. Have both of you on the screen at the same time. Either one of you can answer these questions. Are you ready? Rapid fire. Are there going to be buses? Transit's going to be able to get out to the new site? Anybody know yet?
Yeah, I mean, that, and again, that was all part of the site selection
Okay.
process. Of course, there's going to be bus service eventually, and you could point that there is bus service to that area, so it's not going to be a big stretch to Walker Road and to the airport. There's bus service, so you know the city's made a commitment that there'll be bus service.
So okay, next question is how many floors is this new acute hospital going to be? Do we know yet? I know it's part of the planning.
What you want to do though is change, right now if you walk in either Meadow or Roulette, it's like a maze. To get to certain areas of the hospital, you have to walk through the whole hospital through one of the doors. This structure is going to be much different. If you have to go to the emergency department, you get to park in front of the emergency department and you get to go into the emergency department, you can leave from there. Cancer center, you go into the cancer center, leave from there. Dialysis, leave from there. So if you look at Humber River Hospital, the way it's built now, I think it's something no further than 60 steps from where you exit out of your car to where you need to go. It's like an airport where you have the services lined up, you drive up, you have to go to a CT, you're right there.
Okay, how long until we know? What's next in the timeline? So we've got A and B, where are we at?
Well, it's before the government. The fact the county and the city approved the levy is huge.
Okay.
Major, major, major decision
When
by
did the
them.
phone call go to the government saying we're ready?
Well, that
happened?
went
Have you
back
had the
with,
meeting?
well, that went
A couple days ago?
Well,
They now know.
a few months ago, we went with the MPPs. Our local NDP MPP stood up with our mayor and warden, and it was Taras Nadashak used that statement, "We are ready," and he's the one who brought it forward. The levy, the next day, that next morning, well, the morning of, actually, we didn't get done the city council meeting till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. We put a draft letter together along with the mayor and the warden.
Good.
They reviewed it, signed off, and it went off to the Minister of Health that day.
Next steps, when? We got about 30 seconds left.
We had a meeting with the ministry where questions were answered. So now we'll wait for the ministry to give us feedback and hopefully approval to go to stage 2.
All right. Congratulations so far.
Thank you.
And this is always going to be part of our show. As I say, it's ongoing. There's a lot yet to do on this. So we want to thank David Moucher as well as Dave Cook for being here today and continue on. At least a lot of the pieces are coming together. I know it's a long process, so thank you for your patience. And we thank all the people who have been part of the consultations and all the open houses, because I was at a lot of them too. The hospital story continues. The acute hospital story continues. And so do we right here on Face to Face.